I deny everything but what I have all along admitted. The design on my part to free the slaves.
It really is. So,
and Gabriel, you're talking about a bunch of Bill Clinton era type programs too. The more you talk, I'm like, oh, I remember all those things from the 90s too. You know, all these washed up kind of white leftist things. I get it, but it's like, even like when you listen to a lot of this stuff, it's like, man, it's time for something fresh. So it's definitely a privilege to be on this panel and talk about some new ideas and some new perspectives, because a lot of this stuff, it's too bad that Doc had to leave. He was talking about a lot of stuff that's kind of been said already, and things that have been planned, these public-private partnerships, the banking plan, but we've never tried this actual infusion of direct reparations, multi-generational, atonement-based. Community Investment Act was in 1977. Yep. I mean, then Bill Clinton tried it again in the 90s. And the book that I always hold up on stream was written in the 90s, and probably in a similar kind of.
Hold on, I'm gonna put you back on the full screen, because
screen.
When I love when you put up the book, John D. I'm a bookworm.
Well, it's a great book. Language. It's called The Origins of the Urban Crisis. That was the phraseology used in the 90s, and it talks about Detroit and kind of basically how Detroit got here, because in the 90s, in those Clinton days, a lot of the rhetoric was kind of blaming the poor people for how they got there, blaming black people for stuff, and then it goes through all sorts of projects like this, federal projects where all those nice houses got built and things like that. And you never have a middle class in America without this. I'm going back to the federal government, without federal government contracts. Right. The 50s miracles, it's this federal government contracts. But hey, Joey, just get your contract company and hire these buddies. I mean, these fuckers were building like 50 houses a day. Yes. These motherfuckers were building these little, and now these houses are in Long Island worth like $3 million. These shitty like houses like this, but they had the garbage service, and that was a federal job. So all these like fucking programs that and like houses that were built in the 50s, they're still around, because the federal government infused a lot of funds. So this book was written in the 90s, when that seemed to be the last time, I guess, Bill Clinton, he tried his best to infuse federal funds, but it was still a lot of this rhetoric of kind of blaming people for their own situation. That's when a lot of the racists like Charles Murray came out and all these crazy books. So this book was like, you could tell that it's like shoving the evidence in your face that no, people didn't get here just by being XYZ, and you have these commentators yelling this happened because of systemic issues throughout decades. So it's just sad to hear all these typical government programs just constantly preached, and they've been tried, and that's kind of how a lot of these cities have gotten here. And that's when the right wing kind of steps in and tries to sell the Republican plan, like, oh, what the heck do you have to lose? And I think people can have, different interpretations about that. But you're right that people are ready for something different, that a lot of these things have been written in the 70s, in the 80s, in the 90s. And in the clip you just released on your channel, I was talking about, like, how I like to study a lot of these, the literature about, black philosophers and black politicians. And, Charles W. Mills just passed away last week, and he had a whole paper about, white Marxism versus black radicalism that was published in 2003. So a lot of this, leftism stuff has been around, and, as a white person, it's our privilege and our kind of our duty to study this literature and do something with it as political, scientists or whatever you want to call it. But I always want to try to say that it's not a fetish. It's not, like Josiah says, it's not a way to get invited to the barbecue or anything like this, that we are trying on this panel to get some type of answers. And, I do believe that it's, in my opinion, going to come from a more left thinking, a more federal government, a more money-based thinking. When I get into the quadrillions, into the real big infusions of cash and capital and public funds to really redress a lot of these things. Because when the government did it at a small level in the 50s, that's how you got people like my grandpa, this Italian nobody, Gabe, the Italian Americans just making pizzas and stuff. And then, now, my brother and my cousin's generation, we're finally getting into the status of what I would call like kind of a new money family, where we're getting there and we're building it. And that's because of the government. So the government can and should do this for everyone. And that's if there's only one point I keep coming back with on this stream for me, is just the importance of the federal government, and how much it can do. And they're throwing around trillions right now. We were making fun of Joe Manchin the other day. He was throwing around $4 trillion for infrastructure. I get it. We can do $4 trillion per city.
Exactly.
It's like
we
it's
could do
to that
whatever
point,
we need, and that's why we gotta, like, for me,
new ideas.
I definitely want to keep, like, I have to, because like I understand MT, but I already know, like, over the course of next year, I have to not only understand it, but get to the point that I can teach it. And not even just that, the federal jobs guarantee, because these are the three things that we need immediately in this country for people to understand MMT, because that's how we pay for everything. For people to want to pay Black Americans reparations, and for us to pay Black Americans reparations, and to have a federal jobs guarantee, so every person in this country who wants to work can work at a living wage, not a survival wage. So it should be a minimum of $25 to $30 an hour. Then you can start talking about rebuilding communities, right? Because then there's all this money. So then you get the community together. You get this town together that, okay, Los Angeles has this many million people, but Watts has this many. Community Watch, you come together. What does your community need? Everybody gets to put up their ideas, what they want. The community votes on what they would want for the community. We start there. That's where you start. Those are the big projects. The little projects that don't get picked up, we fund that through the federal jobs guarantee as well. It just doesn't get to be a big project. But it's like, oh, you wanted to open a surfing school? Well, we didn't give you the school, but we're going to pay you to be a surf instructor. And maybe over time you can build up something and you can come get a grant or something from us. Or, you understand what I'm saying? But we have
I agree with that.
Because then it's federal money, it's big spending, but it takes away a big piece that Republicans hate, which is, why do I want a big bunch of people who don't know shit about my community coming in and trying to tell my community what to do? But instead of us outsiders going into hill country and into oil towns and telling them they need to learn how to code, we could instead be coming in and saying, we're going to do a federal jobs guarantee. What do you want in your community? And what do you want the future of your community to be? Since we have to give up coal mining and oil. So what is the vision for the future for your children, so they don't have to leave your town? Because I know a lot of people who live in the South. A lot of them don't want to leave. They like it.
Yeah. I mean, here, forestry, I'm like, my backyard is a daggum forest. Like, across the canal from me, the military base is a forest. We had a freaking alligator on my neighbor's porch. We need a federal jobs guarantee.
Fuck that alligator. Let me tell you, I'll shoot that bitch and cook. I'll shoot that bitch and have some dinner. Like,
listen,
let's go.
We need somebody needs to come and get these alligators, because we have literally
don't teach me how to hunt. I'll be out killing everything.
We've encroached on the forest. And we got wild boar, we got fox, we got gators. And we need somebody to handle the gators for the citified girl that lives in the country, because I'm not trying to deal with nobody's alligator. That's a federal job where somebody can come get it. Really? Animal.
I love your vision for these jobs. It's so specific.
But you're keeping it a buck, because those people have like little alligator farms and they like keeping animals.
I love it.
That could literally be a job. That's an animal rescue job. Take them back to the swamps where they're supposed to be.
Hudson alligator control.
I like it.
They get feral cats and dogs.
I need you to come closer. You sound really far away from me, Danette.
I said animal control.
But I need you to bring your head down so I'm not looking up your nostrils. Hey, I'm trying to save you because you're going to be looking back at the video like Sam could have cut that.
Mud, you're going to edit that, right?
No, it's me. I be
the nostril comment, I mean.
Oh, no.
Oh, do you cut this one?
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
Let's doing the interview show.
We couldn't get anybody to get the gator. The gator got so bored and went back to the canal behind my house.
That's funny.
So yes, I agree.
There is this beautiful observatory in my town that was built during the last federal jobs program, the New Deal, and it's this beautiful like stone thing, and they put the plaques on it. This was built from the WPA, Works Progress Administration, and like that's again like my earlier point that the federal government can do all this stuff. Like we talk about in these dreamy things of federal jobs, but they could give everybody these jobs and build a country together. Americans do like to work, you know, all this rhetoric and stuff, and everybody does like to work a living wage, and there's a lot of stuff to do in your town. And there used to be a time when the government even used to pay writers.
American wages. Americans like to work at American wages. They don't like working at third world wages in a first world country where they pay first world prices. I'm sorry, John, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, there's no other rant. It's just like it could happen, you know, you could go to there's a great website where you could read all those WPA projects where young writers were going all over the country documenting quote unquote history and oral history and these quote unquote slave narratives that you look up. That was all federal projects, and obviously they were segregated at the time, so the government can and should do this, whether you call it a Green New Deal or not. But that is a federal program to employ people to build a lot of these things we see in our own towns, these baseball fields, these little things, if you have them, all these, you know, things that these quote unquote projects used to be nice facilities in the 50s with gardens and benches, you know, where families like Gabriel's, you know, nice families in the 50s, you could be having this nice little quote unquote middle class living. So the federal government can do this.
Was all white when it started.
It's not a dream. When Joe Biden was around in the 70s, he was, you know, this was stuff that the federal government was talking about. So it's like, you know, people talk about this like a pipe dream, but it's just with the power of the federal government. But there's all these decades of right-wing programming of just, you know, the deficit, the debt, you know, how many fucking years have we been talking about this?
That the right-wingers got taken over by corporations first. Because now the left is pushing us with suicidal stuff as well. Whereas before it used to just be the Republicans pushing policies that were just constantly fucking us, and then from the Clinton era on, it's been the Democrats too.
Yeah, the third
and
way.
The reason why I want to do that is because I don't like to just dump on the Republicans and conservatives because the fact that the left is a problem too, and I don't like it to go just one way because we can just talk about conservatives and Republicans all day, but I've had less Republicans call me a nigger than I've had liberal, leftist, progressives. So I just want to focus on what can we come together on that makes our communities better. And again, our communities are not the same. So how do we fight for the resources so we can fix each of our own communities with federal money? That's the piece that people leave out because people are always like, oh yeah, we need to just build up our community and we need to fix it. And yes, with federal money.
So the two pieces, Sam, that I think are so important that you're putting together here is, and this is the other thing, we don't have to be mad at Republicans and Democrats. They're just not, they don't have the right ideas. The two pieces you're putting together are this federal piece, which organizes the resources, which is what John's trying to point out, and hyper local empowerment to distribute those funds. So one of the huge differences where the story always becomes a sad story with this money is some middle level, whether it's state government or a big city, takes that money over and does something stupid with it. You know, like they end up giving it to their friends and family. They end up awarding contracts to people who don't build what needs to be built properly. It goes wrong because there's no self-interest at the most important point. But if you have an Appalachian council of people who get to say this much for a grocery store, this much for this project over here.
So that goes back to coming together with the community and people, everybody putting out their ideas and them, you know, having a vote.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And that's democratic socialism to me.
Hyper local democratic control.
Like I said, you
It's
vote
not
on
the
the
city
big
council.
projects, and then everybody else gets to choose their job. I think you
Right.
should be choosing what your job is for the federal job. So if you just
Why
like
not?
animals and all you want to do is be a dog walker, we should pay you $25 an hour to be a dog walker.
Then that'll pay
Like,
you to be an alligator walker.
whatever
If you
you
walk
want.
away.
Like if you just want to sit, like if you, some people like spending time with elderly people. So if all you want to do is sit around and read books to the elderly, you should get paid $25 to $30 an hour to do that. It's a social service. It betters the society. And it creates compassion amongst the ages. Because imagine if you got a bunch of young people visiting these old people all the time, then they actually start giving a fuck what happens to them.
Right.
Because when it's your grandkid, you're like, well, I got enough money to take care of them, so fuck everybody. But when you start being involved with other groups and their children, it starts to make you care more. Well, you would hope so anyways.
And then they have these stereotypical movies about from the time about the federal government jobs where they, just to kind of play devil's advocate a little bit, they have all these, if you watch the old movies, all these young boys turn 18 and they're like, oh, mama, I don't know what kind of job I'm trying to get. Hey, pops, how you doing? Oh, I'm just going to work for the federal government cutting grass. And they have the old time voice and everything. And that was kind of the stereotype is, oh, you just got a WPA job. You're going to cut grass. And it's like, that's the kind of rhetoric I was trying to hint at, is that we have this deep kind of anti-federal government thing that I think is just also very American, this anti funding, this like, oh, you got to get a real job, you got to get a private
that's
job.
True. I want to
in my opinion, at
what
least.
you're saying and just say, so we need to change what we value as work in this country. Like being a stay-at-home mother should be paid as well.
Right.
Because raising children is a full-time job.
Right.
Yes, ma'am.
And if you were to pay somebody else to do it, it would cost you a lot of money. Like, I think, like with what you're saying, let's not bring it down to the smallest job. Let's start talking about what we could do with revamping our schools, right? So we can start actually redoing our schools where we're teaching kids STEM at such an early age that kids who decide that they want to be engineers, we can create pipelines for them to be engineers. So when I talk about the federal jobs guarantee, I don't mean just low-level jobs. I do mean better jobs. But the thing about it is some of those better jobs, some people are not going to be qualified and are not going to be interested in doing the work to become qualified. Because if you're over like 50, you may not be interested in learning to be an engineer. But if you're 12 or 15 or 18 or 20, that might be something you're interested in. So I think there has to be different entry points, right? Different things for different ages, different places, because not everybody's going to want that.
Right.
Like I might just like working with my hands.
Part of that multi-generational, would that be, your reparations package that in your mind, would that be part of the actual reparations to ADOS kind of federal?
This is my American shit.
Is this your big picture thing?
This is my big picture American shit. I want my fucking money. When it comes to reparations, I want my shit. I want my fucking bread. I want to sit around and feel secure like other families, but I want to raise the floor for the country. And
so why didn't that work with Bernie though? That's what I always wonder. The federal jobs
because he doesn't like black people. Sasha's trying to get in, Sam.
Oh, cool. Perfect.
Sam, what you said, the federal jobs guarantee, reparations, what was the third leg of your
MMT. Because you have to teach people MMT so they can understand how to pay for nice things. Once you understand, because this is what me and Steve Grumbine were talking about the other day. And Mud, because Mud was in that conversation as well. Once you can get people to understand MMT and understand that we can pay for anything that we want to, then if they don't want to pay reparations, it's a different issue. It's not a money issue. It's a race issue, or they just don't like you. It's a different issue.
Which is helpful.
It's easier to divide, who will go one way or the other. Then after that, the federal jobs guarantee, that is the thing I guess that's the quickest way to change everybody's conditions.
Mm-hmm.
Like to start, because we need some other stuff, but I feel like that's the quickest way to start. If it was up to me, we'd do wealth redistribution.
Right.
But I don't think people are ready for that conversation. But I feel like a federal jobs guarantee is something that we should be able to fight for as a people and rally behind so everybody can make a living wage. and people can start having choice in their employment. And fucking white people love fucking choice. School choice, my body, choice. They like this shit. Now you can choose what fucking kind of job you want. You can go down to a little office and they'll be like, what do you like? What do you do? What's your thing? Well, I don't really do anything. I like to do pottery. Okay, well, we got a pottery barn over here and you are going to help teach people who have PTSD how to make pottery or whatever the fuck it is. There, you can figure something out. Like, John, you make music, shit. Like they could like, you already know, like when you were talking about the Federal Writers Project, they literally, not even just the what did you call it? It wasn't just the Federal Writers Project. It was what was the name of the actual program, John? I'm sorry.
Oh, the WPA, the Works Progress,
because they open theaters. They pay people to write plays. They pay people to compose. They pay people to be actors. Like, we can do all of this.
Oh, I agree. Just something I find that's really helpful is a show that's actually that I encourage you to watch, the YouTube channel. That actually deals with a lot of the stuff. It actually gives idea, and she interviews people from across America, around the world, and from different walks of life on how do you rebuild and build these things for the future. The show is actually called the Laura Flanders Show, and there's a really nice one on cooperative economics, and with Aaron Tanaka, and it's about how people are actually getting these things kind of done as we're doing this and talking about working for building these things as we speak. The Institute for the Future, which I'm an alumni of, is actually working with the author of a book that I have that's named, I cannot think of the name just a second, about Black history of cooperative economics. So this is actually what we're discussing. The futurist community is actually heavily working on projects like this, and I would highly start watching their channels, and I would actually start taking ideas and actually start finding like-minded people in your communities, because this is where even the United Nations has decided to do a big push toward actually rebuilding more cooperative economics internationally, and there's actually a section of the United Nations for this subject. So community is a truly important thing, that as we're kind of coming through and realizing that with the response to COVID and the rugged individualism on steroids that people are acting with, that it's a value system that we need to bring back. The question is, what is going to be the engine to do that? So I highly encourage you, like I said, the Institute for the Future is doing good work on it, but also another person whose work you might want to run into if you've never run into him is a gentleman by the name Amitai Etzioni. Amitai Etzioni is a sociologist who actually focuses on communities and a political philosophy of community called communitarianism. He's a left-wing communitarian. He has done some really good response.
I'm sorry, you're going in and out of being muffled.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Amitai Etzioni, he actually helped build the Institute of Policy for Communitarianism at George Washington University. And he has done some really good work on how do we heal America in terms of how we've really come apart. How do we really rebuild communities, and how do we use things like holidays and touchstones to come back to each other again? That's one of the projects I'm working on. So I highly recommend you check out his work, because we are, as a collective, as thinkers and as people who are political action figures, coming together to recognize that the cult of individualism has really run its course. People have literally died because of the cult of individualism. So it's really about, how do I, as a person, find like-minded people to build the next steps? And how do I find people who've already done research and work? So I highly recommend check out the Institute for the Future's work on this. Check out Amitai Etzioni's work on this, because that will give you some foundational work and ideas on how to solve some of these problems, because they've been doing some intense studies on this for about 20-some years.
Sasha, I feel like I want to suggest alongside what you're saying, but tell me if you agree with this or not. Finding some folks locally, maybe it's even like a study group, to do those readings with, have those conversations with, that I think the understanding what's been done and what works is critical. The other, in my mind, the other critical piece is starting to build almost right away with people, like-minded people in your community, because that's bottom line. That's what we're trying to accomplish, right? It's like,
yeah, it's what I'm always suggesting that people do, because right now we have more time on our hands in certain respects than we will ever have, because the social things that we used to use to distract ourselves, a lot of those have dissipated because we can't go out and do things the way we used to because of COVID. So there's no reason why I can't get to know people in my neighborhood like I am right now, and actually starting, like I said, either study groups or thinking groups with people in my neighborhood and or in my city to actually start tackling these problems, because I have the time on my hand to do this. I found philosophies and things that might help us through this, because it's always good to look at, even our Social Security program was based on what they had in Germany, right? So sometimes it's easier to find different ideas and tweak it a bit. And that's why I'm encouraging people, we have this downtime, please do it now, because you have a unique opportunity to come together, because people now recognize that there's a real problem in a way that when we didn't have time and we had all these distractions, and they know they put people back to work, but only so much, that we didn't have time to do that before. But this is the perfect time to start building those things, because the people who actually are the people who predict, not so much predict, but come up with simulations for the futures, like futurists. This has even been recognized in the United Nations, has been recognized that this is a problem, that in order to combat climate change, much less any of the other issues that we're talking about. Because remember, the vulnerable communities of color, the poor, are going to be the people hardest hit by climate change. We have 5 years until we hit some major milestones, and in 10 years, we're going to see a big transformation. So actually coming together as we're having these natural disasters and saying, hey, I'm going to give you resources. And when you got yourself a little more stable, we're having some talks and we're getting some things done. We can teach some things and maybe, bump heads here to see if we can figure out some solutions to making our community better, because this is a good time. And bringing people in to take care of that, it's really working fairly well for a lot of people. And I highly recommend you guys do this, because I can worry about racism, and I do, and I can worry about bigotry, which I do, because I live in the community of Tree of Life. If that is one of the synagogues I go to, if I had gone to synagogue like I was supposed to that day, I got sick, and on my way there, I didn't end up going, I would have been one of the people shot and killed at Tree of Life. And that forces you to kind of realize that these things are important, but at the end of the day, humans are important, and making sure that we are ready and together as a group to handle the big catastrophe that's going to try us all, which is climate change. And a lot of poor people, a lot of minorities are going to be living in communities that are going to be the hardest hit.
That is
so learning how to build community now, and this is my job. This is the reason why I talk about it. As a futurist, one of the things I am trained to do is talk to minority communities and say, hey, do you know in 5 to 10 years, you are going to be some of the hardest hit people by climate change. And do you have a plan of action to deal with this? And how do you want to take the strengths of the community to figure out how we're going to deal with it? Because that's it. We in other words, what's going to happen to humanity, period, is going to require a level of cooperation that we can't even get along and talk with each other.
Yeah, as you were saying that, my brain was going in that same direction. My feeling is we're not going to do anything on climate change before reparations, which is maybe means we're not going to do anything. It could be the end of us. Although I think you're right, that's what we should be dealing with right now. Until we repair the rupture to some degree of empathy, white folk we are culturally programmed to not feel empathy for other people. School shootings, the reason why people say guns over almost anything else, it may not be that at a person's core it's about I hate Black people, but that's in there somewhere. So there could be, on the one hand, a small group of people that are doing the heavy lifting of racism, but then in the big middle, there's a bunch of people who maybe they're racist light. We know liberals are.
Spectrum.
We know, like,
it's a spectrum. It's like autism.
It's a spectrum, and so we don't know. But what we do know is that it is also a mental health issue. not in the I feel bad for these people way, but in the don't give that guy a knife way. Like, we know there's a lot of danger here that we have to work carefully around. And so,
And
so
we don't
Hold on. Let Sasha go real quick, and then after Sasha, go ahead. After Sasha, it'll be
Do you know
Danette.
how much actually it takes? Which percentage of society actually you need to actually make major changes in society?
3%.
3% to topple a dictator, do a revolution, and 25% to make lasting social change. You only need to turn. There's a Scientific American article on this, and my ancestors were one of the among the 3% that actually fought in the American Revolution. So you only need 3% to actually fight in a revolution, and 25% of the community, 1/4 of your community, decide to make lasting change, and then other people follow along. There's a chapter in Charles Dickey's book where it talks about that with Rosa Parks and the Civil Rights Movement. And it's really important to keep that that science in mind, because what I hear from some of you is like, we have to convince like a whole lot of people. No, you just need to get 1/4 of people to do shit.
Just a pocket.
Yeah, you just need 25%. You get 25%, you guys stay the course, you don't get distracted, you keep going, you'll make it.
And it has to be that it's about being a new human being. It has to be that we see each other, black and white, and everybody else that's in this country. We have to see each other as family. Like, we really have to get that it's us, and either we all survive and thrive, or we all die. Like, that's it. And that's where the breakdown occurs. People are resigned. I do agree that people are resigned. People feel powerless and hopeless. But it's because the boot of the powerful continues to squash the many. The powerful few continues to squash the many, and it is about changing hearts and minds. I mean, we've got to have that component in there, because if we don't,
I'm still gonna keep pushing. I'm still gonna keep pushing back on you. I don't think it's the hearts. I think it's the minds. I think once they start knowing the history, for a lot of them, it gives them the empathy because they start to understand.
It's awareness. We have to bring awareness to people. Then comes the empathy, then comes action. And all of that has to do with whether I see my fellow human being as equal and worthy of what I have. And if we're not seeing that, if Black people are not seen as full citizens of this country, worthy of whatever my white neighbor across the street has, then that I believe that's where the breakdown occurs. It, like we've been saying, it is the rugged individualism, but without a change in who we are, without an understanding that we all die together and we all thrive together, without that, all of this is just conversation. I really just think that it's about transforming this country.
I don't really like conversation. I mean, I think it's cute, but I like action. I like basically studying action plans and getting shit done. That's my modus operandi.
Yeah.
Well, if we are unconscious automatons, we cannot. Whatever action we take will have the results of the level of our consciousness. So I totally agree with Danette in that. None of this lasting change can happen unless we are also innerly, our awareness and consciousness are changed. Unfortunately, that's a long-term program, and our societal and economic issues are burning. So this has been my kind of the thing that I've been breaking my head on for the past 15 years. But this is really where the rubber meets the road, I think.
So my other question is, we don't have any young people on the call. What do young people think about these things?
I don't know. I wish I would have had. I got a 22-year-old, so maybe I'll invite him next week.
Right, because that's where I really need to know. I need to communicate as an older person, though I'm not old yet. I'm older, but I'm not old.
Yeah, we're not 22.
Right, I'm not 22. I'm not in my 20s anymore. They said goodbye to those a while ago. So I need to understand, where do young people feel about these issues? Where can we? This is their future here. So how are we partnering with them to build a future, as I would say, as a futurist, the preferred future? What I don't want to do all this work that young people don't want.
Ooh, wait. Ooh, are we colonizing the future for our children?
Well, that's my issue. Like, what do you want? Like, I'm partnering with you
You know
because
what? I got 2 young people. I know one that will show up. The other one I got to see if
that's how I
if
feel.
she's
I feel so
available.
bad for the kids because I feel like their grandparents are colonizing and gerontocratizing their future and not giving them a
Right.
voice or information or resources to build the future that they go on and on about, that they got all those resources in and an abundant supply when they were young.
So
I hear
know
you.
I like
And I
that.
don't think they're
I like
convinced
that
by
idea.
the traditional politics, like the signs and everything. They follow the TikTokers and the different like influencer, and they're not listening to a lot of celebrities. So
I
it's
talked to 'em,
interesting.
but
I
there's a
talk to them on
divide
TikTok a
because there's
lot.
a bunch of young people that the internet is not their life. You think that all
Mm.
young people the internet is their life, but there's a block of young people that the internet is not their life.
Well,
Yeah,
that's
I
because
think
Gen Z is less likely to actually be, they actually like more time off the internet than millennials do because they want to actually communicate because they were raised by Generation X. And then Alpha's going to be a different animal. But the point is, what scares me about almost all the discussion about the future is the young people. So,
Yeah.
like, as a futurist, that makes me really scared.
Yeah.
Well, my
But
daughter is 12, and she expects she'll have a normal life. Like, she's talking about having 2 dogs and 3 cats and 5 hamsters and kids and all that stuff.
You're
And
like, ooh, you don't even understand.
yeah,
And so,
I think
yeah.
in all of our, I think, individual walks, we especially need to make sure that our, the people we engage with are a diverse group, including in terms of age. I think no matter what, reparations is a matter of accounting for something that has occurred in the past, for which we have to come to terms. Not dealing with it. I'm not going to have a conversation with my 6-year-old child, and this is an extreme example, but if there's like a structural problem with the house we live in, I'm going to fix the problem because I shouldn't have put him in a house to begin with that had that problem. So that doesn't mean I wouldn't let that, a young person know what I'm doing or why I'm doing it. But there's nobody of any age, race, creed, anything is going to stop me from pursuing reparations because
Oh yeah, of course
that
not.
is the problem that has to be repaired. And I think that everything else, to me, that's the compass. That's the compass. Everything, you can't say anything about politics in America without saying something that either affirms the need for reparations or says that you're racist. It's the beginning. It's the moral compass that starts everything. You rebuild from that. So I
Yeah,
do
no,
agree.
I
The
definitely believe
conversation has to
reparations
be
first. I'm not coming off that hill, but I need to be able to drag my white brothers and sisters along with me, and I'm gonna bribe them.
and I need to
Yeah.
actually be able to talk to, like I said, I am going to, one of my goals in the next year is I've been doing very good outreach on TikTok to younger millennials and Gen Z. And I've been talking to them about the future and planning and what kind of future they want to build because I feel as though no one's listening to them. And that scares me shitless.
People are listening to them. You got to find the spaces where those conversations are happening. They're not happening where you think. I mean, at least in Chicago, our culture might be a little different. We have a really impressive youth culture here, so it probably has
I can
forced us
honestly
to
say in
listen to them.
other areas that I've talked to that they're not being listened to. In political circles, they're not being listened to. So it's not like it's people are not, they're breaking the social contract. They're kind of not preparing for the next generation coming up very well at all.
Well, for me, I can say I haven't put out a call to younger people. Like I did just recruit a 22-year-old yesterday. And part of the reason why I recruited him was his age. But and I have another one that I'm looking at, but he's too goddamn Democrat. I can't take it. All his fucking tweets. Like he's just not where I need him to be yet. So I'm watching, I'm lurking, maybe 6 months from now. But I have not actually put out a call and asked young people if they'd be interested in, participating. So until I do that and I get no responses, I can't really speak to how they feel or, you know what I mean?
Right. It's just like I'm doing what I can to listen to their voices because I'm a futurist and I work with you.
No, I mean, I can't say that they're not interested if I didn't ask them. That's what I'm saying about me. I'm taking personal responsibility saying if I haven't asked them if they'd be interested in participating in these conversations, how could I say that they wouldn't be interested if I haven't even extended the olive branch? And they may not necessarily think to reach out to us because they might be looking like, oh, well, they know this and they're older. They might not be interested. Because, when you're younger, a lot of times you give people older than you way too much credit.
What age range are we?
Go ahead, Mud. Please go ahead.
What age range are we talking about?
Oh, for 18 to 25.
Okay, I think I know maybe 3 people.
Let's rock. So you and I will talk on the phone after this, and we'll start pulling something together. We'll pick a date and we'll set it up with Sasha for us to have a younger panel. Because I like that.
Because what I'm really worried about, and this is why, I'm working with people about creating education classes and various different topics for young people, is I want them, if I know that the house is burning, and we're going to have to work together across generations to fix the burning house, I want to make sure they're educated as to why the goddamn house is burning and work with them on some ideas that they would want to build this preferred future, because this is the future. If I'm not getting their input and working as a partner with them, I'm just colonizing it.
Yes, I agree. No, when you said it, it's funny because I was like, are we because as a person who has a certain wealth position, I definitely try not to colonize the overall mission. That's why I talk so much about local stuff and people building things where they are without getting super into this should be this A, B, C. That's why I talk in broad ranges, because I don't think I get to decide for poor people what poor people need. But again, you have to also make sure that you're not colonizing things for the youth, because they see the world differently than we do. A lot of kids don't think they'll ever be able to own a house. Some of them don't want to own a house, and a lot of them don't even want to own cars. A lot of them like being able to kind of take public transportation. They like the idea of being able to live a nice place, but being able to move if they want to. It's just different. It's weird. I don't know. And I think some people just think they'll never get a house, so they start lying to themselves and coming up with reasons why it's great to never be a homeowner.
But that's where I want to tell them. The Institute for the Future is looking for you. There are actually intentional communities that as a student will let you live with them and study with them to learn how to build those kind of places.
I think that's
as
amazing.
A student. So since you're young and you're students, take this time to meet with your friends and your buddies and in your dorm room, because you'll never have time like that again. Start dreaming and building a future, and then work with other groups of people to get it done, because you have the time to do it now.
Yeah. So
I have 3 young neighbors that wall behind that wall, and they I spoke with them, and they are worried that they will never have children. They simply cannot afford. Not to mention climate change.
I have no interest in having children. Black women my age, they're never gonna. They're like, I can't afford it. I'll never have children. The only reason why I want to have children is because I've secured someone who can afford to take care of them. But if I didn't have that, I wouldn't have children. Like my ex, I wouldn't have had children with him. We couldn't afford them. So and it's sad that people feel like that you can't procreate without having money. That's an insane kind of thing. But I want to table where we are with this part, and I want to kind of go where John D was. John D, can you talk about the lack of the hope or lack thereof hope about the that you had just put in the chat? Because I think that might be a good way to kind of end this off. Because we got to bring hope back to our children. But I'm gonna let you.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I've just been in the chat posting a few things. Yeah, I was just Googling a few, like, youth surveys and things like that. And like, yeah, there's definitely, it seems like that, during the quote unquote Trump era, there was a little bit more hopelessness. Some of the studies show that there might be a little bit more hope now. I don't know if anybody can really define what that is, but yeah, I mean, there's also a lot of, school shooters that have been happening since like school started this year. And we're talking about 18-year-olds, but there was like a 13 and 14-year-old planning to shoot up a school in Florida now. So it's like, there's definitely something going on, whether you study the surveys and things like that. But I think I've said it a lot about the reparations. What the topic itself and what the policy gives us is, at least, if hope is kind of a cheap word, but it gives us that sense of action, of fulfillment, of an actual practical policy that can be done, that does, at least have a bill that at least can give you that hope, and it does help, white people atone for this sick whiteness, this rugged individualism, this whiteness, this evil cancer, that's just kind of been plaguing. So reparations gives you that hope, and perhaps that's just the issue that we're on here, and it's the right issue to be on. But yeah, it seems like there's something in the air, whether these surveys are going to quantify it, whether people in their local communities see it, or in their blocks or whatever work they're doing. A lot of different experiences today, but I always like to look up some of these surveys and some of these things, so I put some in the chat. I look forward to talking to more young people and getting them on here as well. I thank you for your time and everything, and everybody's insights. But yeah, the youth are powerful. They're really, really powerful, and we want to listen to them. And
yeah, we want young people on the network. This might be the beginning of something new.
Yeah,
but we got to get them in first. Because like I said, this network is all about creating spaces for
and I think that's that excites me in a way more than trying to persuade. I don't know. In my experience, I think our brains change. Well, it's a fact. Our brains change as we get older. But I think for me, the idea of giving young people space within this structure you've created and making it feel safe, in the sense that the outside world isn't going to come in and kind of interrupt it, but also safe in the sense that there are some boundaries. It's like we're giving you resources to work with. We're not going to tell you how to use them, but we're also going to kind of set parameters that are our sense of what's appropriate or not appropriate, and then just letting it go.
Yeah, everybody has to fall under. Definitely, if you're doing your own show, you have to fall under like the mission of the network. Because we do have a mission for it. It's not just like.
But I think that's the most powerful way to engage young people. My experience has been, as opposed to, I have this idea, I want to persuade you.
Hey,
it just seems like there's always a kind of like, of course you do. Right. But I love it. And Sasha, well, I guess Sasha's not here, but I appreciate her bringing up the young people. I do think that's super important. I hope we're fellow travelers in this journey. For us oldsters, we got to do the reparations thing.
We got to do reparations. There's no, like I said, I don't see any way around reparations, but for me as a person doing reparations, I have to spend so much time educating you. I might as well educate you on MMT and the federal jobs guarantee while I'm at it, because the federal jobs guarantee really helps Black people, and people don't think about it that much. Well, and people don't think about it as much too, because like, Chicago, right? They always talk about how like 40% of Black men are unemployed. So imagine if 40% all of a sudden they have jobs, not just a job for a week or a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. That changes the stability in the communities. So if we already have our reparations and you do that, that's a lot. That's like, we can start building wealth in our communities right away.
And I think that if the federal jobs guarantee includes dealing with climate change,
well, that would only make sense, right? I don't see why we wouldn't. Like, the whole point of the federal jobs guarantee should be for people to, like, people should be able to bid with ideas for how to create new cities. There should be all types of like competitions and drives and all kinds of stuff going on all over the country for federal money to be able to prove if they can make things that work. Kind of like how Sasha was like talking about how the people are already doing this work. Imagine if people who wanted to do this work could be funded to do this work. Like, we are only limited to our imaginations.
Right. No, I
There's
agree.
plenty of green jobs to be done. I'll tell you, there's plenty of jobs.
I mean,
to be done.
they could be moving the people on the coast, you know, like you said, building new cities. I mean, there's tons of land in the South that's all woods, where if people need to come inland, we need to be building infrastructure for people to come inland. If rising sea levels are already out of control, then we've got to plan for that. So
exactly.
Yeah, no, I agree with your vision. And I think that people can be paid to have conversations with white people about racism. I think I get it.
I think so too, though. No, I think so too. That's the thing. Like, with that kind of program, we can literally start paying people to get work done that needs to be done in our communities. We could literally be paying people to do like education. We could be paying for there to be like community education, like where for people who wanted to come, not like, I'm not saying we should start re-education camps. Let me be very clear. But I'm saying like, if people want to start having like community centers where they actually do presentations and they invite the community to come and learn, I think that should be open. And I think the people who want to show up and learn and build that community should have that chance.
Right. And because I remember as a child staying after school because there was after school tutors. Now, like my son needed help after school. There were no after school programs for that.
Exactly.
He was in special ed and he needed a parapro where he could orally test because he wasn't good at taking written tests. They didn't have a parapro for that. My son was promoted to 7th grade and couldn't write a complete sentence. Like he didn't know the different pieces that were included in a complete sentence. And he was going to 7th grade where they start learning how to do research and write research papers, you know? So the reason I homeschooled was because he was being promoted with a 5th grade understanding of reading and a 3rd grade understanding in math and couldn't write a complete sentence. And they thought he was ready for 7th grade. So there's those kinds of things where we beef up the special ed programs. We help people that, like you were talking about, Joe Biden and his infamous learn to code stupidity. There's a lot of things in this country that need to be done. There's just so much stuff that needs to be done. My husband and I, we were driving past homes, like areas in our town where the brush has grown up and grown inside of houses.
Exactly. Like I said, there's so much work that could be done if we actually, like, again, it's just about having vision, right? And that's the thing. And we have to start, like I said, it all just goes back to organizing each other and creating community. And you have to pick the things that you're going to organize people around. And I think, you know, reparations for Black Americans and, you know, with racial, you know, I don't like the word racial justice. Forgive me, y'all. I know, because it just has been so diluted. But reparations for Black Americans who descend from chattel slavery. And I really think we can rally people around a federal jobs guarantee. I think you can get people to rally around a federal jobs guarantee faster than get them to rally around Medicare for all. I just do. Because, again, you know, Medicare for all is great. I don't want to be sick. But if I can't feed myself, I don't care. I do, but I don't. Because it's not my most immediate threat. Like, Black people are dealing with the most immediate threat. What is going to be the thing that might fuck me up tomorrow?
Like, Black people die because they don't go to the doctor. We die because we won't go to the doctor, but we won't miss work.
And that's the part. Because we have some people in our community that don't fuck with doctors, but like you said, let's talk about the people who won't go to the doctor because that involves taking off from work. Oh yeah, for sure, Ida. We've been on this thing forever. Anybody who wants to run away, feel free. But yeah,
my thing, Sam, with your with your project, which I think is really smart, this approach, the federal jobs, like doing them both, is it feels unwieldy to me. I feel like I now have to talk to more congressmen. I have to make more things work. That doesn't mean it's probably smarter. It's probably just, okay, it's harder work, but guess what? It's harder work and there's a better chance of the outcome you want. My instinct with politicians is they're not very bright. They're not really interested in helping people. And even if the people are into this, my approach is I want to have all the numbers on a wall in front of me. And I just want to figure out when we get to the magic number of supporters for just reparations that we can get that through Congress and let everyone get, I know. But what I mean is enough of pressure applied to enough people in enough districts that it gets through. Now, I think what you're saying is, yeah, but a jobs guarantee is going to give you that pressure to get you to that. And I don't disagree with that, but there's a part of me that's like, okay, you work on that. I'm gonna be on with the team that's working on this more narrowly thing, and let's just keep track of both approaches and see which one is breaking sooner.
So this is the thing, Gabriel. I understand what you're saying, and I don't disagree. But like Yvette has ADOSAF, and they're strictly reparations. Like there are a lot of groups that are strictly reparations. The white left,
but they're never going to get. They can't.
But the white left,
they can't pass
the white left is hot garbage. And if somebody doesn't steer and get control of that bitch, this country is doomed. So I can fight for my people, but I can't just fight for my people because I want my reparations. But if these stupid motherfuckers keep fucking up the country the way that it's going, there's not going to be enough money for me to have a good life. Because I'm going to spend a lot of it on security. And I don't mean security from angry white people. I mean from living in a country that's destabilizing because they're fucking it up.
I hear you. I hear what you're saying on both of those levels.
But there's a lot of Black people that are not going to do this. The same way you were talking about how like with the Native American groups up there, they're like, hey, old white man, no.
Right.
But in public, if you want to stand behind us, we appreciate the numbers, but you shut the fuck up and we don't want to hear shit from you. There's a lot of my people that are never going to be interested in coming in and doing this work. This work is the work that I can do with the people that I can get to do it. I feel like those groups are going to continue to be built. And I'm interested in helping anybody who wants to just do strictly a reparations group. But again, I've seen how the fallout works. That's why I always talk about mutual aid, because if it's built around mutual aid and we're educating within that, reparations will be an issue. You understand what I'm saying?
Oh, I hear you. Yeah.
It should be organized around, we need reparations and we need to organize the community, right? That's what brings people back. The problem with it just being a just reparations organization is reparations doesn't come fast enough, and everybody isn't equipped to be a political person. So what happens is you have people who are really doing a lot of work and you have people who are doing no work, and there becomes a lot of clashes and a lot of times for conflict. And the reason why there's time for conflict is because you have people who are in spaces that are not their space. Whereas if everybody would have came together on mutual aid and the political cream would have risen up and built their political thing, and the people who just need to be doing education and mutual aid stayed there, there's different spaces. And there needs to be social clubs too. Some people, their thing is to be a social club. We need people that are setting up communities where it's literally just a social club. Maybe it's a game night. Maybe it's something for the kiddies, for the families. We need all that stuff too, because sometimes people just need a place that they can go and just be together. That creates people caring about people too. I'm just saying there has to be multiple places, because from what I've learned from actually doing that work in the trenches with my people, everybody can't do this work in every space.
I think that's right.
When you try to force them into it, they blow up your fucking groups.
Right.
Well, the
Clearly.
Cherokee Nation just got $75 million from the drug companies, and they didn't have people like holding up signs and like making working class people go out and get it. They had a representative go and a lawyer, you know, the lawyers of their community went and argued to the federal government. Yeah, and they've been slowly getting stuff for decades. You know, they have
that's part of the culture.
Whole different setup, you know.
You know why piecemeal cash payouts to indigenous people is okay? Because they have land that is what they really want. And so the federal government will print money for anybody forever. Except
this
for
was a company. This was a private suit against a drug company.
It's kind of the same thing. I hear what you're saying. My overall point is that the courts will, the courts will come down on the side of the indigenous folks. That stuff will keep happening because no one's saying, I want Texas back.
Yeah.
Y'all owe me Texas. I'm going to court over Oklahoma. I need all that stuff in Oklahoma. It's a different. So the challenge we face is that there's not what there is the labor, right, and the work stolen, and there's not another thing that they'll give you instead of that. Like it's just money, and they don't want.
Those land suits might come soon. You never know. Like in the next 4 or 5 years, there might be actual suits to reclaim land because the young people say that. Land back.
But they gave back a big chunk of Oklahoma because what we have to understand is land back doesn't mean they're going to kick the gringos off of it. It just means that they get control back.
Well, no one really knows what it means. That's a big problem.
Yeah, because they haven't decided exactly how that's going to work in Oklahoma, right? Sorry. So sorry, I want to do this. Okay, I'm going to let us keep rounding around this, but then I'm going to want us to move off of the Native Americans just because nobody in this group is Native American, and I kind of don't like to talk about them when we're not in their shit.
That's fair.
Yeah, that's my only thing because I feel like they need to be represented because they could be like, yeah, you got that all fucking wrong.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to bring up the point just about the opioid thing itself. Sure. Just when you have a nation, when you have a whole organization, at least the only point was they didn't have to rely on the working class or the people like often with reparations. That seems to happen.
Sasha makes a good point. Black Americans need to be able to finally take their claim as genocide survivors. The reason why Native Americans get a lot of things that they get is not only just because of treaties, it's because they are classified as genocide survivors. They are seen as genocide survivors. Even when we talk about reparations, the first thing people, like I had that white lady tell me, you weren't genocided like the Native Americans. I'm sorry, ma'am, but you should look up what the definition of genocide is. Because if you look it up, you will see that Black Americans have gone through 3 of them.
Yeah, no, I think you're right about that.
The Holocaust.
A lot of the challenge of that is it's like a cultural, the culture shifts, the white culture shifts every time a new layer of truth is unveiled. So you confront people with the reality of the genocide of Black folks and they'll reframe it just so they don't have to feel for you. I mean, that's the bottom line is how do I avoid confronting this sore spot, this spot inside of me that I don't want to open up for any of this, not even for my own people, because we've been taught to not feel for anybody. I mean, that's how you end up with a school shooter. That's a kid who was taught that human beings aren't really important. It starts as we matter, but they don't matter. But the logic of that's wildfire. You can't control wildfire. The logic is human beings don't matter once you create relative value to people. In the end, no one has value.
Yep.
A lot of these school shooters are just white supremacist kids too. You just don't hear about it in the news reports. A lot of these guys are looking at these screwed up websites and everything. We got this thing in this country. There's this white supremacy nastiness that is just always there. That's why there's going to be this skepticism. And, even though you go in a lot of these spaces, just speaking up, it's just there's a lot of natural skepticism and hostility, and just like the white supremacist ideology keeps just coming up, and it's all these shooters and all these things, and you just look at it, and a lot of people there's that hopelessness, but just that because white supremacy just always is there. It's the KKK is just continually allowed to exist, and it's just continually coming up, and all these shooters and all this guy in Tennessee. It's just there's a lot of fucked up shit going on with this white supremacy, and it's
isn't that why Darity and Kirsten talk about us needing to deconfederize this country?
Right.
Sorry, keep going, John D. I'm sorry for jumping.
No, that was actually literally like the end of the. No, it's just the end of the rant. It's just like it's whenever somebody talks about school shooters, I just always like people to remember that they're all, the right story is they're white supremacists. Columbine, they weren't bullied. They're a bunch of rich kids that were into these stupid fucking websites, this dumbass death metal music that people get into, this stupid insane clown posse stuff like this, like in all these. This Adam Lanza kid was into all that, gamer white male stuff. Like there's a lot of deep cultural things that everybody knows is going on in America. We keep talking about the kids, but white supremacy is the ideology. What's wrong with the kids? White supremacy. What's wrong with the boomers? White supremacy. What's wrong with Biden when he says this shit that comes out of nowhere about this? The white supremacy is so deep, and I have these thoughts, and sometimes I don't word things the right way on the stream and stuff, because I do believe that every white person is like a racist or a recovering racist, and we do have to have these spaces to go through it. And some people like to demean these corporate events and stuff.
You
but
sounded too much like Robin DiAngelo.
I mean, that's what it is.
You race traitor.
I like the race traders. I mentioned Thaddeus Stevens. I had to throw in one race trader. Thaddeus Stevens is in there. John Brown. I'll support these race traders, But these guys are talking about it. Like John Brown hated those Boston abolitionist societies. It's like sometimes, don't you just feel like, the real thing we have to do is a little bit of violence? Like, at least as me, as a white guy, as a white male, sometimes you just feel like you want to get in there and really do more legit stuff, because people are sick of hearing from you. People are sick of, people don't trust any white people, and they shouldn't, because this deep white supremacy, it's inside all of us. And it's like, I understand that view. I understand it. In like a lot of these clubhouse rooms, it'll devolve into this conversation every time a white person shows up. So that's the rant. And I think it's legit. And I have a hard time navigating it, even in these discussions myself. And I think that's a very relevant conversation right now in a lot of these type of spaces that we're having, just like, get the fucking white people out of here. And I see it, and it's like, I think a lot of people need to realize that's like a healthier thing than not, but it's how do you get through it? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I definitely curated my white people.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're right.
Go ahead.
This is, my feeling is that this space is a gift, John. This isn't really where our work is. This is my holiday space. My workspace on this work is with other white people, and it's exhausting. And you got to do whatever it takes to make people feel comfortable and like they're being told they matter. And so you use that culture that precedes the gauntlet or the process by which we became white supremacists. You use whatever they remember from, through epigenetics or cultural transmission or whatever, remind them of that, and you slowly ease some of that hatred out of them. And it's really hard. It's like your kid walking in from, walking through a bunch of stickabugs bushes. And you're like, okay, now I got to go through all your clothes, one little, needle at a time, and get all this stuff out. But that's the work. John, to me, that's what we have to do. However, that's how it looks for me. It's going to look somewhat different for you, but you got to wade into a space where a whole bunch of white people are like, Democrats or liberal, like that's fine. You can stick with you don't have to go straight to the old men in the suburbs with the, extreme right-wing views and no masks, but you still have to do the work, because we all, our people, we're a mess. Even the generously minded among us are like problematic, but you got to do that work. This is vacation. This is like, ooh, when we hit the lottery, how are we going to spend it? That's what my Sundays are.
So I find it funny because I remember on one of the streams, John D was like, if I just was sitting around talking about reparations all the time, nobody would care. Nobody would watch. I keep putting John D's white ass on the front of these videos, and they be taking off. Like the group video, it has almost 400 views. It went up Friday morning. The video I put up this morning of John D, 91 views already. I'm gonna be putting up everybody's. But the thing I think that's happening is I think John is going to end up having a community where people end up start reaching out. I think what's going to happen is I think white people are going to start reaching out to you people as white people. Like some of them like me, but some of them are scared of me, I'm sure.
It'd be nice if that happened. No, I hope, because I've been trying to do that a little bit, but it's like, just reach out, you know. That's interesting because in those thumbnails I had my framed white liberal glasses, so I need to bring my framed glasses again so I look smarter, like a proper white liberal.
I'll get round ones. I'll get like baby Steven Spielberg glasses.
Oh my God, that guy. Oh my God, that was so terrible.
That was awesome.
I was so glad that we had Steve Irvine the next day, because he kind of brought me back from the ledge, because John D. Gabe, there's certain YouTube videos like that day with Gabe. That was the one you overslept for. When Gabe came in, I was like, after watching this video, I wanted to be like, America's doomed. Fuck white people. End of my TED Talk. Like that's how I felt after watching that video.
She was kind of upset.
Because he was just, for him to just like compare,
she had
like
some
loss
things
of,
she wanted to say.
like loss of wages. It was just a mess. It was just so frustrating.
You handled it well.
But I was just like, because it was like a scary kind of calm. Because I was like, if this is how you feel, fuck you and fuck your babies, and I hope this whole shit burns. And I believe in energy, so I'll come back in another form. I would come back as a hurricane and kill your children.
In a lot of places, you hear that everywhere in the chat rooms and stuff like that. You just like a lot of the conversations will not devolve or evolve into that. You know, it's just it's there, and that's the real thing. You know, that's the real deal. And a lot of people say like when you pay the reparations, it's not meant to come together. It's meant to. We're gonna do our own thing. Fuck you, pay the fuck you, pay me.
Yeah.
But yeah, fuck you, pay me. We're gonna
feel like that. We want to go. We want our own communities. A lot of us do. It's like, give me my money so you never have to see me again.
I think that's an accountability thing that's
very
relevant.
I'm like, y'all don't understand, especially if you're racist, you should be pro reparations. If you truly in your heart do not like black, this is the best thing. You will never see them. I promise you. We are not that interesting.
Because we would be damned before we spend money to go live to some racist ass people.
Why would you if you had it to spend?
No
it's
need.
like
no need.
Even now, it's if you look at the last 30 years of like demographics, it's white people showing up where black folks are. Black folks are not
running up on us, not us running up on them. That's true.
Yeah, that's true.
They're reverse blockbusting.
Exactly. And it works because people are like, I'm leaving. There's too many white folks here.
Or they start calling the cops on everybody, or they run up your property taxes so you get pushed out. Like
that's what
a lot that happened.
Mm-hmm. That's how we ended up with the Obama Center. That's what happened. That's why Barack Obama just tore up my park.
I fucking hate it. I'm so
because white people were like, this is the best thing I can ever imagine happening. Literally, it's the footprint where if you did a study and did like, where are the most barbecues, church events, birthday party, it was the exact spot that he took. And he even made a joke about it. He was like, I'll have you over for a barbecue live.
And that's such a problem for me, because like have somebody who's not from the community do that to the community. That is a Hawaiian man.
All this was afterwards. I thought this was the green room afterwards.
She's going to edit it.
How you going to be eating a popsicle on the show?
The same way I smoke weed on the show. It's my show.
The same way
they don't like it, they don't have to watch.
Eat dinner on the show.
See what you said about indigenous people, Sam. I take that approach with Barack Obama. I don't criticize Barack Obama at all. I just keep my mouth shut, just because the history of the anti-black stuff that was thrown against him. I just feel too personally. I just don't criticize Barack Obama. I'll go against all the way, but but I'm not one of these white kind of people that really like. There's a lot of white Republicans that are starting to look up to him like they do Thomas Sowell. Kind of, there's this weird idolization. I don't idolize him, but I don't criticize him on that. I just don't feel like it's my place, because he went through a lot of that. Like the month after he got elected, those fucking weird signs that were held up with the Joker face and Rush Limbaugh, the tan suit. He went through a lot.
And that is not happening.
He wanted to be the black president, so he needs to know what it's like to be black in America and know that when you step into white spaces, that's the kind of reception that you get.
Yeah. Pretty much.
And that's why I just think it's his community to take at him, and it looks like you guys are taking a good.
Well, but it is up to us to hold him to task because he took advantage of our community. But Edie's the same way. Edie doesn't talk to her Black Southern friends about Kamala Harris because it just looks like a white woman talking down on a Black woman.
No, and I respect that. Like, I appreciate that John and Edie and people that are part of the Reset Race Network are self-aware enough to know not to talk to people, not to talk to Black people about Kamala Harris and Barack Obama. And at the same time, what drives me crazy about our community is that we've adopted them and they don't care about us. Like, they don't care.
Right.
But I think that's the education piece, right? Because when you talk to Black people, oh, well, Obama couldn't do anything. And again, it's like religion. So this is the thing, because I think earlier we were talking about like the older people in our community, like millennials and Gen Z have the same numbers as boomers. Why are we fighting with old people when we can start trying to get to the young?
Yeah, right. I agree with that.
Because they adapt.
Yeah.
Because why?
But
they adapt. Younger people adapt. They adapt to conditions, situations. The older you get, the more rigid you get.
Yeah.
That's a good point. It's an operational question though, because how we get them registered and how we get them to do, I think people have tried it probably stupidly to an extent, but there are some.
I think we need to do this more like MLMs. So like, again, I come from the personal development space and I also come from the MLM space. I've sold insurance. So this is the thing, like you create teams and then you create so I was saying with Reset Race, I'd like to have it where we'll do like a training video where people could do like monthly Zoom calls with their friends and family and like literally like teach them like teach them about reparations, what's going on with the Black community, teach them MMT, but if you think about, but do it like MLMs, right? So you create the video, you make the script, you send it out where people can download the video, download the script so they can do it. And then from there, if it replicates, even if it doesn't replicate like 1 for 1, if you get 1 out of 20 people or 1 out of 50 people replicating and doing that once a month over a year or two, that's a massive amount of training. And that's offline training. Because this is people reaching out to their own network and having a Zoom, which is private for them. So I think we need to do this more like MLMs. We're too busy trying to be out here, like trying to like teach the masses. Like, no, we need to start looking like insurgents. Like, let me teach this group of people how to do this and let them go out and teach. Like I said, we need to be like MLMs. That was the whole thing. In MLMs, if you don't train leaders, you don't make money. Because you can't make the money on your own in MLMs. You can be the best salesperson ever, but it will limit where you can get in an MLM. You can be the shittiest salesperson ever, but if you can train your team, they will shoot you to the sky and you will make money off of them forever. So I don't want to do that part of it, but
it's also like when you're talking about personal development. So I am in a leadership training program with a personal development company. And the people that they train to host their informational meetings are volunteers, people that are sold out for the technology that this company provides, the transformational technology that this company provides. I don't get paid to host introductions to this work, to the transformational work. I'm sold out for it because of the life I got to create after participating in the training and the development. So it does take that, and it takes a level of commitment to and
a buy-in, right? There's a buy-in. So for you being willing to donate your time to do then, you have bought into, you believe in the system that has been created, you buy in and you're taking ownership of that system. That's the same thing we have to start getting people to do in their communities. Nobody's taking ownership of their communities because they feel like this community doesn't belong to me because it doesn't give me any resources. Nothing comes from my community except for me just being there.
That's true. Sam,
Mm-hmm.
What does that structure look like to you internally? Like among, I don't know if it would be among us. I don't know how you would structure it, but for you at least, because this is going to flow to you, you're going to at least observe it happening. What does this look like? Where are people watching and then they comment underneath? And so you're like, oh, that's somebody I'm going to touch base. Do you imagine us connecting with people and connecting
That
them
would
to the
be.
video?
I think it would. I think all of the above, right? I feel like people will be so like a lot of people. So I'm in the chat when the videos go down. So I talk to people in the chat all the time, like that frequently watch the show. But sometimes you'll see people come up in the comments. John jumped in the comments. I know John saw the thing where the guy was like, "Oh, here we go, the fucking mythical white ally. God damn, why are we building movements with these people?" And John's like, "Look, thank you for just letting me be in the space." Like I just yeah. No, so John D, you asked, are we starting a religion or a cult? This country is built on cults of personalities.
Yeah, I like that cult word. The C word. I like that cult word. It's a good word.
It is a cult. It's a cult of personality.
It's a good word.
The thing is, we need to teach people to care about each other enough so that they don't start abusing each other. The problem is most people that build cults, they build them for themselves. There's a reason why I keep a bunch of people around me. I am Liz. But yeah, no. But the thing is, if people don't have a feeling and a connection to something, like, because we're literally having to break people's religion. Like, republicanism is a religion.
Yep.
Liberalism, that's a religion. I can't take your religion and not give you something else in return, or else it could go a very bad way.
Sam, we have to imagine a whole new way of being, and it does require a level of dedication and commitment that you're willing to volunteer your time. We know that Sam is sold out to this because she edits 7 days a week. She's working and building what she's building 7 days a week, and it takes that level of commitment to humanity. It's what it's about. It is about transforming the experience of what it is to be a human being. And right now, it's trash. And we have to be about the business of elevating and evolving. If we don't evolve, the planet dies. People die if we don't evolve. And that's really what it's about. It's about a spiritual, mental, and a physical evolution. We just we can't continue the way that we've been going. It's not working.
Absolutely. I think that's really really well put. I think you're absolutely right. That's a strong, very clear discernment. I think it's absolutely true. So I feel like we're at a point where we can at least start to talk about some kind of expectations around doing that, pulling people in and connecting them to something.
Well, and we need to, so that's going to be logistical stuff that I would definitely like for us to kind of have ready to go in January, because me and Chris did that work before. Like, basically, you're going to have people who are going to reach out to you and like start trying to set up stuff. And when they do, you have to have resources. And when people start reaching out, if there's nobody in their city, we have to make sure we have their information. So when people do come to us who live in that city, we can automatically connect them to each other. So you don't end up having a bunch of people like separate when they could have been coming together first. So there's a lot of systems that we can like set up to like start connecting people. That can be done. I want the website up by February. I'm gonna ask for that for my Christmas present. I want a server and the website. I've been slacking because I didn't want to have to build it myself. Shut up. I'm like, I came back in the house and now I got to listen to them be bad. Come here. Sorry. Oh my goodness. But so that's something that is going to have to be set up. I think the best way is going to be doing that through like maybe like an open table or some type of secure. Well, we could do we'll have to figure out some type of like secure way of like, because you can do like subscriber email lists, but you can also do like Google Sheets where you have people like put like zip code or certain email with the zip code, so you can actually start putting people together. As for the mutual aid stuff, hopefully with Sasha, we'll actually be able to come up with like a getting started 101 plan, like like basics. Even though I have a video from this LA group that does mutual aid here, which at some point I'd like to connect with them. I think I've just been leery of doing too much stuff because of COVID, but I guess I'm one of those people who won't get used to COVID being here, or who's having trouble getting used to COVID being here. Like for me, it's just like I still kind of want to not be around massive groups of people and stuff like that.
Same. I feel the same way.
Yeah,
it's hard.
But we need to.
Sounded exactly like you just slapped that dog.
No,
it sounded exactly like you were like, wow. I know what it was. It just was funny because you were off screen. You're like, excuse me. And then you're off screen and it's like, bam.
Yeah, like
I'm back.
I used to
and the dog's quiet now.
I used to clap at her when she would get rowdy like that. I'd go, no. And she'd go, she'd shut up. But that's what you do. You clap your hands and you snap and you're like, leave it quiet.
But I do actually have like a how to get started 101 video. I'll probably put it at the end of this one, even though my videos be so long. But oh well, people get over it. But they literally break it down. They do a good job of breaking it down. Like, okay, how do you get started to do mutual aid? First, find one or two other people who live in your community, and then from there, start get a Google Voice number, get a little flyer, and start putting, going out and reaching out to people and say, we're trying to get a little community group together. It's going to be Sunshine Flowers, or whatever the hell it's going to be. And then from there, you get your first group of people together, and then you start building from there in pods. So that's the first round. Once you know what's going on, you have to figure out what your group is going to organize on. That's where it gets more complicated. So it's more of just like, you have to literally go out and knock on doors and meet people. And I think we have to like kind of get to that point. Or since we're in COVID, maybe you don't get to knock on doors. Maybe you just want to leave people flyers on their doors and have like, hey, we're having a Zoom. Or you could knock and be like, hey, here's a flyer. We're having a Zoom for the community. We know it's COVID. But we'd like to have a community meeting so we can start, targeting figuring out what some of the things that the community needs. That's an easy door knock. Knock, knock. Hey, I'm so-and-so. I live in the community. We know it's COVID. So we're passing out these flyers because we want to have a community Zoom. Because, it's not safe for all, 200 of us to come together in a room, but we can all, 100 of us can come together on this Zoom or something like that. Like, I think it's just that you have to start somewhere. And I think from there, you'll be able to start to get people together to go further. I know there's more to it than that, but that's like where you start. You got to start by at least getting 2 to 5 people together and start there.
I agree, Sam. And I think whatever your formula is the formula.
We're going to keep building it out.
Yeah,
Sasha's going to be a really good resource to us.
The other
Absolutely.
One of the things to add to it is a Facebook group, because my next door neighbor created a Facebook group for our neighborhood.
That makes perfect sense.
Yeah. So we live in a master plan community where there's several neighborhood like villages. Mm-hmm. And so our village has a Facebook group, and other people in the other neighborhoods have joined our Facebook group, because like when dogs run away, or when the bus doesn't come, or there's a couple of people that are like promoting their home-based businesses on the Facebook. And you can do Facebook Lives. You can connect your Facebook group if you create a Facebook page, you can connect it to Zoom. So you can do the Zoom meetings, but you organize everybody through Facebook. You can also voice chat people through Messenger. So, you know, you can start your mutual aid groups on Facebook.
See, there you go. Yeah, I think we're headed in the right. I think we're headed in the right direction. Like, I think the main thing is getting the resources together and then teaching people how to start building these pods in their communities. And the thing about it is, once people get together and you start giving them some resources, you'd be surprised how the groups across the country, damn it, dog. The groups across the country will start to help all of us create better systems. Because there is trial and error in some of this stuff too. And when people can reach out to each other and kind of talk about what's working, what's getting people in, what wasn't working, those things kind of help too.
No question.
John's making faces. He's so funny.
Oh, no, sorry. So I'm just reading through my Twitter feed, and it's one of these interesting posts about, you know, just all this dumb shit white leftists are always talking about. Just white liberals are so obnoxious, and you just go through the, I'm sorry if my faces were bad, you just go through the stuff they're talking about. It's just so out of touch. And then you see another post about, like, is Vin Diesel mixed or is he black? And then I just have a crazy Twitter feed, and it's just like, but most of it is this dumb stuff that, like, white liberals are talking about. And it's like, I don't know what planet they're on. I like Marxism, but like
patriotism conversation that they're having right now, I'm over that conversation. It's so stupid to me.
And they argue about YouTubers. They argue about Jimmy Dore all day. They argue about all this pseudo drama. They argue about these
work
people.
Avoidance. It's just work avoidance. Like we talk shit about the lefties so we can break white people out and get them to understand, like, if you keep following these people, we're not going anywhere. But even for us, like, you're literally sitting in a group that's trying to create new systems. Like,
but they talk like they're doing something, like they're really, like, think they're really creating a revolution. Like, they really, I just feel that energy from them, you know?
The revolution will not be YouTubeized. The revolution will not
Twitterized.
Twitterized, but even YouTubeized. Now, it might spark the revolution, but the revolution ain't happening on YouTube.
Right.
You can't.
I guess so.
Yeah,
it can spark it. Like, it can spark it, but it ain't go
local.
It's gonna take the people.
Only, you know, anything that's going to be new, like an actual revolution, like a change, isn't going to be something. It's not communism because it's not anything national. It's not a takeover of a federal government or something like that. It's local. It's what Sam was describing. The revolution is when you come to my neighborhood as a federal entity or even a city entity and say, do this, and I have the power with my little council to say no. We've decided that's not what we want to do. And somehow the government has reorganized. Right. And that's it. And it's done. It's like, we've decided we're going to put a highway through and we're like, no, we don't want that. And we have that power. Nothing else is revolution. Everything else is a version of the same crap. Anything else, no, I want it to be more left wing. I want it to be more, you know, libertarian, whatever you're saying the same stuff. And it's mostly white men saying it. So it's like, basically they think they're making change because it's affirming their sense of like being a little monarch. Whatever I say goes. So I declare we're going to have this new lefty government based on blah, 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 Marx, blah, 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 Trotsky. And I'm so convinced by my own power.
My problem is nobody. So I've been thinking about this for less than 6 months, and you guys can kind of get an understand of, well, no, not 6 months. That's a lie. Me and MG wrote the platform this time last year. So let's say a year. I've been thinking about this for a year, and I've really just started trying to think about creating systems to make it better. How have these people not, like, they're not, like, not tried to build anything? But you understand what I'm saying? Like, I don't mean it in a bad way, but I'm just saying, like, people are thinking in bubbles and just thinking about, like, oh, well, this is what I mean. They cannot explain to me the vision of their society. I don't have a full vision, but you guys can see where my vision's going, right? When I listen to them, I don't see where their vision's going. They're just talking about how we're going to be socialist and everything will be great because, because my boss will be nicer to me.
They're
not
trying to.
I think
they're
people
trying
can get there, but just the way they want to do it, like, oh no, you're going to go to like some ghetto or some area and say people like Marxism is. Some people are literally dodging bullets to get to school, even the word abolish in some of these Appalachian poor white communities. What abolish? What are you talking about abolish there? Like people don't know what the fuck. So maybe they're going to get to Marxism. Probably eventually that's where it ends up when you have time to probably get there. But like, it just seems like the sequencing is off, It's like, and people don't want to have it. I saw the craziest clubhouse room a couple days ago where this black activist, young, passionate, was talking about mutual aid, these community fridges and all this awesome stuff. And he's like,
I love the community fridges.
I'm sick and tired of white Marxists. He just went off and like all this stuff I'm saying. He just went, they don't know what the fuck they're talking. And he's like, I like being a lefty, but I don't want to hear any of these college lefties anymore, these white liberals. And I said,
they need to shut the fuck up.
It was, I heard it, I heard it. And that's why I say thank you for just being in the space. That's why I say that, because I feel it. And that's why I'm happy that I don't identify with that tradition.
Because white people need to talk to white people. And to be honest, so listen, this is the thing about it, right? Like, I can teach people about reparations. I can teach people about MMT. I can teach people about a federal jobs guarantee. I can teach people how to be a better ally to me. I cannot teach people what it is to be in that space and deal with what comes from being an ally to me. I can tell you what's kind of going to happen, but I don't have the same experiences. I need y'all to be able to help your people through it, because what's going to come for them, like you said in the other video, Gabriel, like, you'll be all right. You're going to end up in the wilderness. You might lose some friends, but in the end, you'll be okay. Like, I feel like if we create a community for these people, especially with people like you guys who can come into this space and be respectful of the space, but you always contribute to the space. You understand what I'm saying? So there's a difference between contributing to a space without coming in and taking over the space and telling the little Negroes what they need to do because you know better.
Right.
Versus,
I think that's what they're feeling from that side.
Yeah. And like I said, everybody here was picked for a reason. Like, the FHL, Fred Hampton Leftists, had an issue and they allies got out of pocket. Like, I don't see that happening for my group. There's only like 1 or 2 people who I don't really know. So I don't know. They could slip up. But outside of them, like, I don't see anybody that I have asked to be a part of the Reset Race Network group that is white ever overstepping their bounds, like online, where people had to come back and be like, you can't fucking do that. You understand what I'm saying? Because I guess, I don't know what, because they had kicked out Compton J. They're all back together. The, Blues Brothers, the band back together. It's wonderful. Thank you, White Jesus, all that good stuff. Because I don't want to spend too much time talking about their internal stuff, because I really don't give a fuck about them. And it's not really a beef. As long as they don't talk about reparations, I don't care about them. But what boiled down to is basically, like, he was talking about, like, it was kind of racist and it was fucked up the way that things were done. And they basically were like, you can't say it's not racist. And basically they came at him and started like popping off. And it's like, you can't do that as an ally. And even to the point when you're disrespected by Black, I've seen you do it, Gabe. I've seen you be disrespected. You don't go whole hog and start, that's why I can't stand you people.
That's why you people.
Like, you do that one time and you lose all credibility with the community. You will never be invited back because you show that you weren't an ally. You were just looking to come in and take power. The problem is a lot of white leftists want to come into Black spaces because there's power to be had there, but they don't want to listen to Black people and share power.
But it builds their street cred amongst themselves.
Bernie Sanders. There's a lot of people who were hung out in the civil rights movement and went on to be like Republicans and all this other shit.
Right. Well, Joe Biden was, the opposite example.
Most of those 60s hippies ended up like that.
And he became a Democrat. Like, none of that mattered. If you do it wrong, you can become very well known. If you do this work inappropriately for wrong reasons, then people recognize recognizes like. So then it's like, oh, I can do business with you. But if you do it genuinely and sincerely, the way Sam's describing, then people become angry. You lose friends, you lose job opportunity. I mean, you get you feel the real consequences, but you also see the world as it is. And then, I mean, you can't replace that. Like, just to recognize, you could be sad about the world that you end up in. Like, this isn't where's the rainbows? What happened to my unicorn? But those weren't real in the first place. So would you rather, it's like everyone likes to use the Matrix metaphor, but it is like life is not all as wonderful as you thought it was. But at least now you're not actively contributing to the suffering of others.
True.
But sooner or later, you're going to figure out, whether you knew it or not. At some point, we all come to terms with, like, I may not know why I have an ulcer and a drinking problem, and my family will talk to me. But it one way or the other, you're paying for it. So better to have discernment, and now you can make choices, than to live in a fantasy world. And so those people come into these spaces, and if you do it the wrong way, like Bernie, I mean, Bernie literally found the whitest part of America, and then all of his supporters were like, but he loves black people, and there was no evidence of that. In the way I live, you can kind of tell the environment I prefer to live in. It's 60 and stony. Like, you can kind of tell because it's where I am. So people don't end up like, oh, I wish I weren't in Vermont or Maine or wherever where I've ended up. You went exactly where you wanted to go.
That's true. No, that's true.
I mean, that's just a fact. So
because when I was doing deliveries for Amazon, so every now and again I would end up delivering to people more than once. And I remember talking to this one white lady, and she was just so happy that she moved a place that there was like black people. She was like, I'm actually excited that like my kids are going to actually be able to be around like non-white people, because she was like, because I don't want them to be weird. Like for real. She was like, I just don't want them to be weird. Like, it was so funny because every now and again, white people will have a frank conversation with you, and they don't want to, but they're like, I don't want to offend you, but can we kind of talk? You look like you do this. So she was like, no, because so she was like, she's like, I took my daughter to daycare. She's like, there was a few black ladies there, and you know how our folks get. We get excited and amped, and we get loud. And she was like, my daughter was kind of like, and I kind of had to get her to be like, no. You're all right.
That's okay. You're all right. This is how human beings.
But she was like, but my daughter's 4. Like, this is the time to do that. But for me, I was just happy that like this white woman is literally it's still a very affluent area, but she's literally thinking about the importance of having her daughter grow up around other people so she'll know how to interact with people and like be a good person. Like, that was just a random white lady. She didn't know I was an activist. She didn't know Adam from me to know that, like, she was having a conversation with a person who would actually give a shit about what she had to say and look back on it like, okay. So, like, people like that are out there. And she wasn't virtue signaling. Because, like, you can tell when people are virtue signaling. It was a conversation. Because the first time I brought her stuff, and she had just moved in. So when I saw her like a couple months later, that's when we had the real conversation, because she had seen me more than once. So she was able to kind of be like, yeah, so I you know what it is? I meet enough good white people to know that they're out there.
Yep.
That's it. And the thing is, like, I don't need everybody. I just need enough.
And that's been my experience. My experience has been, especially within my transformational community, the company is actually doing work to deal with its own internal racism. Like, they're really doing work to manage that and to deal with that. And it's refreshing. Like, I grew up telling my mother, who was a Black Panther and a member of the Nation of Islam, that not all white people are devils. Like, I've just had too many experiences where I know that I believe that it's possible to transform this country. I really believe it. Too. I think that for those liberals that are off in their own world, something has woken up in them, and there's more work to do. There's more transformation
I think that's right.
to be had. And for them, they do, probably at the end of the day, they've spent their day on Twitter sharing their thoughts, signing petitions, donating money, which is a step better than what their parents did. And so for them at the end of the day, they're tired and they're spent. And I'll say this again, is that they need grace, and they also need education. They need to know that what they're doing, when they are damaging their reputations, when they're saying things, when they're out of pocket, when they come into organizations and want to take over and they're not respecting the space, it does damage. It definitely does damage. And they also need a space where they, like the community that you're building, Sam, where they can learn, and that it's okay to make mistakes, and they're not, they have to be humble, like it really does take something. It's, within my coaching business, my pillars are awareness, empathy, and action. Like a lot of it is they're oblivious. They're oblivious to the impact that they have, and they're slightly more woke than their mom and dad. Like, really.
Yeah. I think it's just going to be a process. I don't think it's something that happens overnight. And like I said, I think we're creating a community. Like, even for John D to be like, I got into reparations because of y'all. Like, Edie was into reparations, but Edie became like a real reparations activist because of me. And I didn't even realize that. Like, you never know who's gonna like be brought in because of you. You know what I mean? And I think all we can do is do what we can do, right? Like the Matrix, right? You pull out who you can pull out, you train them up how to fight the enemy, and you hope that you have enough people that when the war comes, you can protect yourselves. That's really where we're at.
That's really where we're at. And try to have outposts all over the country, ready. Because the other thing that you were talking about before, Sam, I think is a worthwhile model for us, anticipating at least potential disaster and thinking about where will people have to go. So, chapters that are grown through this work, if they're able to do things like building community gardens and doing basic education and doing other sorts of mutual aid work, as things get harder, when you start to have, less and less fuel, let's say, is the scenario. So you're not getting deliveries whenever we want it, like we do now.
That's true.
You're growing for yourself.
Because when gas hits $6-7 an hour, Amazon drivers gonna quit.
The business models are just gonna change. And this is what everyone thinks. This is all like disaster planning or whatever. Sasha, this would be great. She would love this conversation. It'll just be, the math will be like, okay, it costs this much in fuel for us. We're gonna start delivering less often. And it's just going to be math, and it's going to change our lives profoundly. But because it's a capitalist system, they're not going to blink. So now you get fresh fruits and vegetables once a week because you live 5 miles outside of a city. You live 20 miles out. You might be waiting once every 2 weeks, once a month.
Did you see in New York, they had to send in the police with the sanitation department to confiscate a bunch of fresh fruit from the street vendors?
Yeah, I saw that.
That fascist kind of stuff.
And never mind. I'm not.
I just saw like screenshots. So I don't know the whole story, Sam. If you know the whole background, it's one of these things again you see on Twitter.
They didn't have like a vendor license or something.
Vendor license,
But in a country where people are starving, that's criminal.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, the food desert conversation is real, but this was like fresh. This was like bananas, tomatoes, and they didn't just send the garbage truck.
Throwing in a compact, like I said, that shit was criminal.
Cops.
And in the right country, they would have got their ass whooped. But
but we allow it. Our relationship to food is so unhealthy.
Yeah,
but that's one thing I was wanting to mention a little bit earlier, but I didn't have time, is that like, as much as the left like tends to have the answers on like federal funding and stuff like that, the same left is often the party that does shit like that puts permits on those buildings, like the buildings that Danette's seeing with all the undergrowth and stuff. Like you can't demolish those buildings because a lot of the left leaning politicians are the ones that, they're going to fund your social programs, but those are also the ones that put all these permits in, and then you get all this bureaucracy stuff. So that's the tricky part
for their friends. That's all. That's the old model.
Party or whatever.
Right. That's the old model. And I hope part of what we can accomplish is a conversation that says, okay, that stuff doesn't go together. Like that goes together because of stuff you wanted. But what does go together is in a poor neighborhood, when somebody says that beautiful historic Greystone is a crack house, and fix it or we're going to tear it down, that should make sense. If the block says that is a danger, because that exists, it's a danger to us, first, sure, you try to take care of it and fix it and do like a nice thing, but you don't let it continue to be there for 5 and 6 years while you're having conversations about, you know, historic preservation or whatever, and kids are in danger every time they walk by.
And that's the thing, right? Like, if it needs to be preserved, then we need to have federal money that can be pushed into the community to do that,
to make it happen. But you can't have the rhetoric and then you don't. So we have to suffer down here while you have these high level conversations about it. What is this magic?
This is the video I was telling you about. Let me get the sound on. It's this is from New York when they're throwing this shit out, but the cops are there too, which is just wild. Like, it's not even ripe, you know?
It's not even ripe. John, your inner Italian just came out. You're like, why is that stuff not ripe?
And you know what's even the crazier layer? All those mangoes and all that stuff, they get a lot of that stuff imported from Peru, you know, because it's cheaper to get it from Peru. Like, a lot of this stuff, this isn't even American fruit, but it's like, it's this whole thread. Yeah, there's the one with the cops. Like, the vendor is clearly a beloved member of the community, thousands of dollars worth. It was an immigrant woman, I guess. So, you know, it's definitely playing off on a lot of the, you know, immigration issues going on. But just, I saw it, and just the fact that it was the fresh fruit, and they sent cops. The fact that they sent cops with it, it was just the most fucked up part about it, you know?
Yeah.
And this is supposedly these liberal paradises, you know?
Like, same way with California, these liberal, like, where the Democrats run the state, and people are just poor and fucked up.
But if people have like a compassionate mindset like we do, and want to do, you know, that we believe in funding, but we're not complete right wingers, but we don't like that shit, there's really no spot in this two-tier democracy. There's no place for us.
We have to, and that's the thing, right? And that's why I think I'm so happy about us creating these spaces. And I think in the new year, we're probably going to have to, like, start breaking into, like, smaller teams from time to time too, and having different conversations. Like, I know over the next couple of weeks, I want to schedule, like, I would like to schedule us to do it within the next 6 weeks, where I'll go through an interview, you know, all of us, everybody. So, you know, people can actually get to know people on a deeper level, more than just your little 2-minute intro, and, you know, like, really get to talk, you know, like, where people can get to know you and understand, like, who you are and why you care. Because to be honest, I don't think, like, you guys are on Twitter, you guys are on YouTube. Where do you point somebody to a good white ally that cares about Black Americans who are fighting for reparations? That's not here. Who do you send them to?
I really
don't. You guys are those people. We're those people.
Tim Wise doesn't even support reparations. That's the weird thing about him.
Tim Wise, and neither does fucking Jane Elliott.
They used to be the ones.
The Native Americans.
Yeah, Jane Elliott. She's always mad.
She pulled a fucking, what was that shit? That fucking Total Recall, the first one, 2 weeks. Like, her head fucking started exploding and shit. Yeah.
What's that black conservative that's very well known? Jesse Lee Peterson had her on the show, and it became like the way he did the back and forth. But that's what the conservatives are really good at it. Just like saying, you people are crazy. You liberals are all crazy nuts. And that's the worst, when, you know, the liberals get so mad and it doesn't hit you anywhere. It's like, you know, what, you know,
Jane
like,
Elliott is one of those liberals that MLK was talking about when he was saying they only care about the treatment. They don't actually care about the economic conditions of Black people. She is exactly that white moderate that he was talking about. And people think she's so amazing because she tortured white people. So I'm not gonna lie.
Satisfying,
just for fun, I'd like to be able to conduct that experiment. And when people start crying, I want to walk around with cups. I want to be like,
I am drinking your tears.
Tasty.
Delicious.
That's what Robin DiAngelo is going to start doing in 20, 30 years when she's still on the circus. She's just going to go around. She's making people cry, and she's doing all these runs, going to schools and prisons, just collecting tears, all these white tears and selling them.
And selling them, that's hilarious. That's like a little locket. Like it would be nice.
It's bad, but that's how the right wing caricatures it, man. It works. A lot of people. It's crazy.
Yeah. No, you're right. You're right. So
a lot of people are so scared of Robin DiAngelo and all that crowd. They're so scared of her. She's so.
Yeah, they hate her so much, and
she's so effective.
She's so basic and sensible. She just says simple shit. Black people, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, duh.
I don't blame her for charging that much to have to deal with all the ignorant white people.
So as people who have worked with white people and tried to teach white people, she deserves every fucking penny.
Yeah,
that shit is a lot.
And that agrees. Look at her, and that's
hard
at least.
Because I used to do a little reparation in this group just on Sundays. That's why we record this, because I was like, nah, that shit needs to go to scale. And my people weren't annoying.
I deny everything but what I have all along admitted. The design on my part to free the slaves.